before you tonight, infused with energy and overflowing with what currently consumes me, and that is my work. At an early age, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. I was 6 at the time. The 6-year-old growing up in Zimbabwe during interesting and dynamic times was sure about the future. And you know what they say about some things never changing? The desire to be a lawyer was one of those things that never changed. After completing high school in Zimbabwe, I moved to South Africa to study law. I knew instantly that this was for me. I always believed in law as a force of proactive change, and I wanted to be a part of that force, to understand it, to harness it, and to further it for humanitarian purposes. Everything was going well until I got to my penultimate year of study, where law students look for vacation work with prominent law firms. And sadly, to my great disappointment, I was turned down due to my nationality. The South African Attorneys Act stipulates that you must be a citizen or a permanent resident to be admitted as an attorney in South Africa. This act dates back to 1979, and the legitimate purpose at that time was to keep out the marginalized black South Africans who were considered non-South Africans at the time. Yet that law remains in place today. Might I add that South Africa is currently the only place that doesn't allow foreign nationals to be admitted to legal practice, which I find quite bizarre, particularly given the constitutional democracy we live in and the fact that this is blatantly unconstitutional. Foreign nationals don't qualify at anybody else's expense. There isn't a cap on the number of people who can qualify, but here we stand. Be that as it may, I didn't let that stop me. And it was not the last time that being a foreign national would be held against me, but that's a story for another day. So, I wanted to study law, I knew I wanted to travel, and to give true meaning to this idea of being a global citizen, I knew that I was not destined to stay in one place. So the question was, how does one combine their vision for making an impact, using the law, fighting for human rights, and travel? International criminal law was the answer. I applied to do a master's in international criminal law, and this is where things took off. I was accepted into a brilliant program where we spent part of the year in Berlin in Germany and part of the year in Cape Town in South Africa. I practically had a full year of summer. It was great. And so was the intellectual and academic stimulation. The journey continued, and I was then hired at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, where I witnessed and took part in the battle against egregious crimes. We don't have to look far before we see genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed around us. And it was the continued perpetration of these crimes and the lack of accountability that was a major catalyst for me as far as making career choices. After my time at the ICC, I moved to Italy, where I worked with a prominent international criminal law figure. He's commonly known as the godfather of the Rome Statute because he was instrumental in the creation of the Rome Statute, which is the treaty that created the International Criminal Court. At that time, he was leading the United Nations Commission of Inquiry into the human rights violations perpetrated in Libya by Gaddafi forces and by the rebels. I was assisting him with this report, doing the international humanitarian law analysis and the international criminal law analysis. And it was through this experience where you have first-hand exposure to victims, to torture, to brutality, mutilation, that you truly realize the importance of the work that you're trying to do. After that, I went back to Zimbabwe and was in private practice for a little bit. It was very interesting and very enriching, but ultimately a little bit boring, if I'm honest. It really wasn't for me. But I learned great skills that I'm able to apply today. But I knew I had to return to my passion, which was international criminal law. And now, in my current position at the Southern African Litigation Center, I've been privileged to work and lead on cases, including the Bashir case, where we attempted to arrest President Omar al-Bashir during his visit here for the African Union Summit. That case was literally like a live soap opera, and it continues today. The drama, the intrigue, the amazing precedent, and then the great escape. So, just by way of brief update, the state was denied leave to appeal the ruling, and they will petition the Supreme Court of Appeal directly, and we will of course continue to fight this case until hopefully we are victorious. The reason I mention this judgment is because I want to link it, because it's judgments like the judgment we received that make the long hours and the hard work worth it in the end. This judgment in particular has had a massive effect on my life, so much so that I've never been more motivated and driven to continue in the pursuit for justice. It's not easy, and it's not as if you spend your day looking at torture and human rights violations and then go home and have a nice quiet dinner. The violations, they weigh on you. And this work really is all-consuming, in a good way and also in ways that I find quite challenging sometimes. And there are the dynamics at play, always being the wrong gender or the wrong race or the wrong nationality. So it's not an easy situation to deal with. But nonetheless, every now and then, there's a breakthrough. You get a precedent-setting judgment. Your client comes to you with tears of gratitude and joy for the work that you've done for them, the first prospect and hopes of justice. And it's victories like that that carry us through. They are few and far between, but what a privilege to do work I'm dedicated to, work I believe in, and work I consider to be vital for the future. I feel incredibly lucky to be in the position I'm in. I work in a space where international law, human rights, domestic law, international relations, politics, and human dignity interface. It's a space where change, growth, and the ability to adapt, learn, and react appropriately are vital. Working in this field also requires a lot of travel, and it is through my experience in other places that I must take a moment to commend South Africa and the constitutional democracy that has been built here, and in particular the judiciary. The South African judiciary continue to act without fear or favour and produce judgments that are sound in law as they seek to uphold the rule of law and other constitutionally enshrined values. A strong legal framework, robust courts, and spaces that allow civil society organizations to operate are some of the few things that make this a great country to live in. And though South Africa faces many challenges, it must do whatever it takes to protect the spaces that civil society operates in, to uphold the rule of law, and to guard this constitutional democracy. I cannot overstate the importance of these factors, and I see it every day in my work. In South Africa, you have potential for change and impact because you have amazing legislation and courts that are willing to implement it correctly. And also courts that are not willing to give in to misplaced political rhetoric, courts that prioritize human rights, and courts that prioritize human dignity when making decisions. And I think these are fundamental building blocks for the future of this country. It was Kofi Annan who put it so eloquently when he said, "To live is to choose, but to choose well, you must know who you are, what you stand for, where you want to go, and why you want to go there." And it is by these words that I've lived my life and structured my thoughts and my intentions in life. And it is also with those words that I would like to leave you, and to thank you for this opportunity and for your undivided attention.